Good afternoon. I'm Carl Garth and welcome to the Champion Chat with Councillor Alison Champion. Good afternoon, Alison. How are you today?
Oh, Carl, I'm great. Happy to be here as always. Thank you for asking. How about you?
Alison, we're getting into the weekend footy finals. My team's in a grand final tomorrow, so I am looking forward to this weekend.
Good on you, Carl.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, it's
So,
not, it's my son's and my mother's birthdays this weekend.
fantastic.
See how I did that? I had my son on my mother's birthday. See how I did that?
You must have made your mum very happy.
I did. That's how you make a birthday present. So we're celebrating that on Sunday. We're celebrating both birthdays on Sunday. So I'm very looking forward to it.
You do realise there must have been a letdown 12 months later. Geez, darling, you got me a grandchild for my birthday last year. All I get this year is a cake.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much. But how much joy over how many years do you get your grandchild for?
So, you know what grandparents say about grandchildren?
Go on. There are lots of things, I'm sure, but go on.
We get to hand them back.
That's right. That's right.
So, Alison, today's episode, we're going to look at two things. We're going to look at high density housing in Banyule and also the newly approved special charge scheme policy.
Yeah, we are.
Couple of good little topics to cover there.
Yeah, we have. There's a lot of meat in these.
Oh, isn't there?
Go on
Yes.
and on, but we'll just keep it to an hour.
All right. Well, look, everybody, the Victorian Government has recently introduced major far-reaching changes to planning in Victoria for urban development. It wants to deliver a housing target of an additional 2.24 million homes by 2051. That's a lot of homes, you might say. The government says the reforms are to reduce red tape through bypassing local government authorities and reducing the scope for the council to prepare residential development and activity centre planning policy. Now, for many people, they're feeling like these policies have come in and they're riding roughshod over councils and their development planning and the community themselves as to are they really wanting these sort of developments in their backyards. Alison, why, from a council's perspective, is this seen as such a big problem for urban development in Banyule?
So a couple of things. Space. Certainly in Banyule, where in the north, certainly in the northern and eastern end of Banyule, there are really good sized blocks of land with homes on them. So in lower plenty acreage, you've got acre blocks with your big house on them, lots of space. You also have blocks of land that are at absolute minimum standard 600 square metres approximately. And there are a lot of those, say, like Viewbank, Yallambie, and then moving more towards, say, Montmorency, even Eltham North, that kind of area, St Helena. You're looking at some even bigger blocks of land. And in certain parts of those suburbs, there might even be, 1,000 square metres of land with an original 40s or 50s home on it. And a lot of people come into these parts of Banyule and actually say, we love the trees and the space here. And because they've come from maybe the inner north or closer to the city where the land is, 250 square metres for a terrace home. And you can, terrace homes they're actually quite large, but they're only sitting on 250 odd square metres. We don't have that here unless it's a unit as part of a complex. So that's one of the things. We have trees and space here, and people love to come here. The other thing is neighbourhood character. Now, with the new planning rules having come into force earlier this year, neighbourhood character is a feature of a development that local council takes care of. And traditionally when, whether it's a developer or just someone subdividing their block, they don't even have to be a developer, it's just someone doing a subdivision on their own block. One of the features that council would hold on to vehemently is neighbourhood character. That's out the window now. It's essentially out the window. And so with the announcement that not just Banyule, but certainly every single Metro Council has been told you need to make way for X number, X tens of thousands more dwellings. And they vary depending on whether it's, a semi-rural like Nillumbik or whether it's a city like Banyule. So there goes our space and there goes our trees.
Well, it's an interesting point because as you point out, unlike, say, Nillumbik, Wyndham and more outer rim cities, councils, areas, Banyule does not have many green areas left for development. So all we can really do is go up.
That's right.
Right. And I understand that recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, the state government has pushed through a approval for a development of, I think it's a 13-story development down near down near Greensboro Station.
17, Carl.
17. My apologies.
No, that's absolutely fine because there's a story behind that too.
I was going to say, could you actually take us through what happened there, Alison?
Yeah. So announcement went out, just announced wherever it was, Facebook news that was announced. There's a 17-story tower being put up in Greensboro near the train station for social and affordable housing.
Now,
and we weren't asked, we weren't notified. Council wasn't included in the conversation. Colin Brooks MP, member for Bundoora, state member for Bundoora, actually put on his Facebook page, I have been told there is a 17-story tower being constructed near Greensboro train station for social and affordable housing. Tell me how a state member is told and isn't involved in the conversation.
Well, I think that comes back to my comment recently about people being ridden roughshod.
Okay. So our planning team, our planning officers obviously advocate. We know that's not okay. Essentially, it's not okay in Greensboro, but it's also not okay in other LGAs. So there are other LGAs, local government areas, having these or objecting to their tower. And for similar reasons. They're too tall they may be appropriate locations, but they're far too tall. There are too many dwellings and too many stories, as in height. So the heights have exceeded the activity centre plan that the local council has created with their community. And I don't mean an overnight thing. These are years.
Yep.
These activity centre structure plans, they're strategic, they're worked on by council, by the planners, by the council, and by the community who lives there. And there are lots of consultations and communications and ideas going back and forth. And it's based on state government zoning, but then the neighbourhood character comes into it as well. Whereas these towers that are going in a variety of allegedly strategically researched places, locations, are not in keeping with the neighbourhood character of the area. So riding roughshod is, it's probably not a professional expression, but it's a very real expression. And that is exactly what is happening. Yeah. So even it looks like even some ministers are not being given the information or not being included in the conversation.
So not a lot of transparency.
Not even within the party, correct. There's no transparency. There's nothing going on there.
Alison, I want to bring you back to the whole reasoning supposedly behind these is affordable housing and social housing. Now,
they're the dwellings for those community members who, if you like, tick those social and affordable housing boxes. And I actually did ask, Vicky Ward recently when we were meeting with her, I did ask her the question, Wasn't specifically about the tower. It was just planning in general. Why do my community think they don't have a voice when it comes to a subdivision in their street or any sort of planning? They really feel like they don't have a voice anymore. And look, the response I got was actually more based around the fact that there's a tower going in Greensborough, and it was, our advisors have done the research into where that sort of housing is needed most, and the location is sought in that space. And in this case, it's Greensborough, and then there are other suburbs around Melbourne that have, are getting these towers.
So I want to ask you a few questions, Alison, because you're in the real estate game. So
Yeah.
you've got some pretty good insights.
Yeah.
A brand new two-bedroom apartment generally goes for how much money?
It can, depending on where it is, it can be anywhere between, maybe an apartment, you're looking at maybe anywhere between about 500 and it can be upward of 500K. Do you know what? They can be more than that. They can be into the million.
Yeah.
Okay, into the millions. Now, if you look at the Caden building on the top of Heidelberg, at Heidelberg, borders actually Heidelberg and Heidelberg Heights there, the Caden building. It's
Is that just up from the hospital?
Yeah, correct. Burgundy Street, Bell Street, that kind of space. You get to the top of Upper Heidelberg Road and there it is. Yep. So that was constructed a few years ago. Even now, there are some of those apartments in there, have a price of $2 million. They're the penthouses.
Sure.
So they take up most of the floor. But even the ones on the lower levels, you're still looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Right. So let's come back to that point that you said even some of the lower ranges might be 500,000. Let's go for something mid-range, 600,000 to 700,000. In what world is that deemed affordable housing when that a $600,000 mortgage will equate to a $50,000 per annum mortgage payment after tax?
I don't think it does.
So new tower, new apartments, we're being told by the building authorities that there is a level of costing to build these apartments and towers that is completely unrelated to how many you build, more related to the price of the materials and the cost of labour is what determines the price of what you're selling them for.
Does, yeah. And then there used to be, I don't know if there still is, but there used to be that 22% buffer on top of that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if it still is. Okay, so, but I remember when I first started in the industry about 12, 13 years ago, that was one of the things I learned. So a developer would cost out whatever their dwelling cost to construct with all of those things, as you say, materials, labour, time, repayments, all of that. And then they would add that 22% to go, okay, I would need to then sell them for this in order to justify that.
So will this be a private owned tower or will this be a government owned tower?
Do you know what? We don't have that information at this point. So I honestly, I don't know that. But the other thing is the sound that is going on around this at the moment isn't so much of a concern. It's more, oh, well, hang on a minute. What about the parking? Alison, what's going to happen with the drainage? How's that going to cope in that space? And then what about the property prices in the area? If we have a certain socioeconomic group coming into this community, surely that's going to bring the property prices down.
Well, my argument to that would be when the Hadfield affordable housing went in, did the rest of the prices in Hadfield drop because of that?
I haven't researched Hadfield, Carl.
But I don't think the government researches these things, Alison. I think they make and again, just my opinion, but I feel like they're making motherhood statements without actually checking the realities.
Okay. Or here's another thought. Are they actually doing research in this space and not letting us know what research they've done and what information they're finding? Hence, our communities are going, but what about? Because that's what we get at our end. So we get at our end, Alison, what's happening with this? Why is there a 17-story tower going in Greensborough? And that's when humans will create a vision for themselves.
Yeah,
Whatever that vision is, they'll have this, they'll have a statement, they'll have information in front of them, and they'll make up how this impacts them and what this does for them, if at all, depending on where it is. So coming back to, let's say, the 17-story tower, it's like there's a tick box for social and affordable housing. So there's your a large socio-economic group, which actually is growing, by the way, since the last 2 to 3 years. There's that group of our community who needs housing. They need housing. Okay, there's no argument against that.
no,
The argument against it is the rest of the infrastructure that goes with it. And
absolutely.
we have communities, residents who are smart enough, educated enough, knowledgeable enough to know and have a vision of how this structure is going to impact their own property prices in this case, but also how is this space going to function with all of these dwellings and these people in the dwellings? How is this tower going to function? How is the space around the tower going to function? Can we still get around? Are we going to widen things? And we've got no space to widen roads. We've got no space to create more parking. We've got no more space.
So there's some good points in there you've just raised, and we do have some questions about that later on that I really want to delve into. The question I do have right now also is, and it's something you touched on a moment ago, is there a concern that rushing through the development approvals could lead to poorly designed high density developments that end up creating around the community that they're in unsafe and unlivable environments?
Yes, they can.
That was a very quick answer.
Yes, it was. I've had these conversations already. And when I say I've had these conversations, these are the things that I'm hearing from our communities. Like I said, very well educated. They do know what they're talking about and they do know how the space functions. So I'm hearing them and listening to them. In conversations with my fellow councillors, I'm hearing what their concerns are in their wards, and they all know their communities very well. So there's enough conversation going on in the background with the question, how is this actually going to work? And you make the point, you made it earlier, this podcast, there's a lot of pushing through, having an idea, working, and I'm sure it's taken many months for these ideas to come up, the state government to come up with these ideas. I've got no doubt there have been conversations going on for at least the last 10 years. Don't think this is something that's only happened this year. This has been in conversation for at least 10 years, if not more, and this state government is now acting on those conversations. All right. So now it's kind of like, we've had all these conversations over all these years. Now we're going to go ahead and do this because the statistics show this, and therefore we can justify doing this, whatever this is. And in this case, we've got lots of towers for social and affordable housing.
Yep.
Then it comes back to, yes, the speed at which they're being constructed. And I remember quite a few years ago now, there was cladding issues left, right and centre.
Absolutely, yep.
And even and the thing is, it's one thing to create a structure to live in. It's another thing for it to be saleable. And, buyers are pretty smart. If buyers can see that there's something not quite right with the paperwork, the Section 32, the certificates, the building materials, what else? The structure of the property, anything like that, they're not buying it. So it isn't worth anything to anybody. if it's a poor quality product. And one property that really comes to mind for me in Montmorency is a particular development of apartments that was constructed in 99, 2000.
Mm-hmm.
Every property agent in the area knows that it was so badly constructed that there was water damage all the time. There was leaking in the walls, the pipes were leaking, the gutters were leaking, lots and lots of water damage in this particular group of units. It's a group of units that you don't really want to have to do an open campaign for because
Right.
you're so afraid of what's going to come out
Yeah.
in the paperwork. Now, fortunately, that particular block of apartments, I'm sorry, they're not units, they're apartments. There are 2 blocks of apartments in Montmorency. This is one of them. And fortunately, there's now an owners corporation manager who actually knows what she's doing, and she's just gone through the building and gone through the OC and brought it up to standard. And I know that particular building has had the water issues. I mean, people have had their plaster pulled off. So imagine you're owning an apartment, the plaster inside has had to be pulled off, and the drainage and the pipes repaired to prevent more water damage, and then replastered. Carpets had to be removed. Like, I'm talking full on, a full on renovation, really interfering with the structure. Now, if it had been constructed properly back in 99, 2000, this wouldn't have been happening, 30 years later, 20 years later, whatever it is.
Yeah, look, and if we use the cladding as an example, the fires that came from it, the directive then that cladding had to be taken off all buildings, the state government washed its hands of that. The builders washed their hands of that. That cost fell back onto the OCs, with many of them not having the funds to be able to do it, so they had to borrow money.
Yeah.
And now you've got OCs in there that are, to all intents and purposes, almost bankrupt.
Yeah. And this is another thing that, a purchaser doing research into an apartment is going to look at. The first question they ask is, what are the OC fees? Now, and also, is there a sinking fund? So that's another one too. So you've got OC fees, and how many of those fees actually go into a sinking fund for, any damage recovery? And so, if the reality at the moment is, if there's a building, an apartment usually has much higher OC fees than just a unit. But if there's, OC fees, really, if they're anything over about $1,200 or $1,300 per annum, buyers are just going, I can find something with better OC fees. Why would I buy this? I don't care how much it costs. My ongoing costs are so high, it's going to, really make a difference to my bottom line, my own home's bottom line.
Yep.
Why would I buy here? So this is always one of my arguments about construction, development, planning. It's not enough to create the dwellings. Someone's got to buy them. How attractive are you making this property for it to be purchased by someone to live in? And our homes, no matter how big or small they are, our homes are a really important place for everything about us, including our lifestyle and our health.
Yep. Absolutely.
So if we've got a building, and again, we don't have the time frame, we haven't been given that time frame of construction, but if we have dwellings, in this case, like in the case of the Greensborough Tower, our understanding is that the bedrooms are actually smaller than average.
Okay.
That's a big thing for people who are buying a property. How big are the bedrooms?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. What are the rates? How big are the bedrooms? How big's the land? Obviously, you don't have that in an apartment.
Nobody wants a bedroom where you can't swing a cat.
Yeah, correct. So that's a really important feature. Now, if you're already creating on paper, if you've even just got on paper, a floor plan that is too small or doesn't flow, well, it's not going to work on paper. It's not going to work on paper. It's also not going to work in reality. And how are you impacting the residents' health? And another one too that comes up for me as well, and will continue to come up, and it's not a planning issue, but I will just say this, it's just bad design. When there's no natural light and no natural airflow in wet areas,
Mold.
you get mold, which we breathe in and which damages our lungs and our breathing capacity and creates more health problems like asthma. There's that. But the other thing too is you've got to turn the light on. So you're asking your resident to create higher energy bills, like in this case, electricity bills,
Yep.
because you haven't put a window in that opens and closes. Now, you can't do that in an apartment. And most of the wet areas in apartments are actually on the inside of the building.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have
Airflow.
windows. They don't have windows and airflow.
Yeah.
Now, Australians still want the great Australian dream is still to own your own home, and it's to own your own home on your own piece of land. We are not apartment dwellers. And this is what really, really scares me about, look, it's not just in Victoria, by the way.
No.
It's in other states. But this is what really, really scares me about where we're heading into the next 20, 50 years. If we are just apartment upon apartment upon apartment, even if it's a three-story of apartments like we have in Heidelberg, which we'll talk about shortly, or whether it's 17 stories or more, because they're probably coming, what are we doing for our humans?
Oh, we're turning them into battery hens.
Yeah. Do we want to live like that?
Of course not. That's why people want to come to this country in the first place.
That brings up another thing about immigration, but that's another topic for another day.
I want to come back to another point we were touched on before, Alison. That is an increase in residents puts more pressure on local infrastructure. So, we talk schools, community facilities, roads, sewerage, transport, utilities. With the amount of homes that we're going to have to add into Banyule, has the state government committed to any future major infrastructure programs for health, sports, sewerage, any of that sort of infrastructure?
Not that we've been told about yet, if they have.
So does that mean, therefore, that Banyule City is going to have to start looking at its own initiatives to provide those facilities, or the upgrade and increasing capacity of those facilities?
Yeah, probably. Yeah. And again, there's a limitation.
I was going to say, that's my next question, because last 2 months ago, we talked about budget, how the budget's used. We also talked about the fact it's taken 12 years for Banyule Council to eradicate most of its debt.
Yeah. Yeah.
If Banyule Council has got to start building infrastructure where it doesn't have the luxury of saying we'll have to put that drainage off for 4 years because we've just thrown up some high-rise towers, and if we don't do it, we're going to have a health and safety. Does that mean Banyule City is going to have to borrow money again and go back into debt?
Yeah, we're going to struggle. And you know what? Banyule's actually very blessed in that we are just more buoyant than many, many other councils in Victoria. And I don't mean that we have money to throw around by any stretch of the imagination. We are incredibly stringent and careful about where our money goes and which projects, and also how we invest and what grants we apply for. So Banyule's blessed. Anyone who lives in Banyule, very blessed. We've got a group of councillors who are, pretty smart. We're well invested in our communities. We also have officers who are really doing their level best to create the best outcome, not just the project itself, but financially for Banyule. So they'll go right. So we've got, our corporate services director, Mark, finance. Best place to put our money to create an investment where we get interest. Okay. So there's that. There's also grants. So federal and state governments provide grants for different types of projects, every year. And obviously our officers are given that information. We have grants applications are open for this, whatever this is, and the appropriate officers apply for the grants. One of the most recent in Sherborne Ward, Rangeview Road was rebuilt. It was a massive upgrade. It was actually surface property with drainage, and that was a result of the project already being part of the budget, and our officers applying to the federal government's Roads to Recovery grant. So they were successful on that. So that helped council keep the cost down for council, and therefore our ratepayers, and use the state government funding for that. So the officers are always looking out for that, and in many cases are very successful, which is wonderful.
Yeah, I can just see there could be a scenario that comes up where the change you've got to make, no matter how many new dwellings are there that you're bringing rates in for, you're still looking at a 10, 12, 15-year payback period.
Yeah, very much so. You're looking at a decade of recouping. Yeah, of recouping easily. Yeah. And then it does come back to who's on council.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I say we're very blessed because we do have two councillors who were on council, 12 years ago. Yeah, 12, 13, 14 years ago, when the council was in debt. And one of them, Councillor Rick, is very much involved in finance. He's in the finance industry. So he has a head for that. And he could see something wasn't right. So he held those officers at the time accountable. They're no longer with Banyule anymore. And and then the current corporate services team has taken on his suggestions, advice with their own knowledge. And we've created now a budget that's in the black. And yes, that was a good 10 years in the making.
Yeah. Alison, let's shift gears a little, because obviously the other topic that we're going to talk about is actually directly impacted by infrastructure projects, and that is the special charge scheme policy. For those who are unaware, special charge scheme is where council may receive requests from residents to upgrade unsealed roads or replace or upgrade private stormwater drains. The abutting property owners, or those people who are directly affected by that project, may be required to contribute to the full cost of its constructions. Alison, the Local Government Act in 1989 has actually allowed LGAs to implement SCSs before now. Banyule has never done so before, but obviously they are now. What has driven the need for Banyule to look at that?
Okay, so Banyule Council has had special charge schemes for many years. There have been two types that I'm aware of. So one of them is a special charge scheme that has been available for the residents who abut drainage and roads that are unmade or need attention. The difference is that this particular, up until last Monday week's council meeting on the 1st of September, the difference is that the special charge scheme that was in place since before Monday, the 1st of September, was simply if a resident or a group of residents wants to upgrade their street, they can do via a special charge scheme. That was it, pretty much. There was no detail, there was no thought put into it. The officers obviously have a methodology about how it's paid for, and council contributed nothing. Okay. So that was certainly from 2019. And then in my term, last term, my second term, from certainly 2020, 2021, I started getting phone calls and emails, as did Councillor Elizabeth Neely, about the road. Alison, you've got to do something about the road. It's dangerous. The gravel gets washed down. It's muddy. It's slippery. The trucks can't get up the hill. It's dangerous. The water actually drains off the road into our garage or our property. Got to do something. And going back to the officers, their response was, okay, so the policy at the moment is this. Council doesn't have a policy that encourages council to pay for any of it. It's all paid by the residents. And so the surveys that were sent out to residents when they requested it, which is the process, was always, yes, we want the road repaired, fixed, upgraded, and we don't want to pay for it. That was the majority. We don't want to pay for it. And, you're given a bill for tens of thousands of dollars. You're not going to pay it either. So it's like, yeah, we need this done, and it's not okay that we're paying for all of it because we can't afford it. The other thing too is that the part of the methodology was based on frontage, street frontage. So some street frontages are very narrow because there are several dwellings on the block, and other street frontages are very wide because that's one of the original homes in the area that's on a bigger piece of land that hasn't been subdivided, and the people who live there love living there. So there was an unfair division of fees, if you like, or costs. Yeah. Now, a lot of the older residents who live on the larger blocks with the wider frontage, they're not working. They don't have income. They've got a pension maybe, or they've got maybe some shares or something. They don't have the money to pay for that. So there was unfairness. There was a lot of unfair in that space. So for the last 2 to 3 years, in conversations with residents on unmade roads, as well as certainly in Councillor Matt's ward in Viewbank, he actually has a particular, there's a drain across a variety of residents in Viewbank that have, that's damaged. And it's a 50-year issue.
Yep.
It's been 50 years. And to the residents, they're going, oh, council's done nothing. Council's done nothing. Council hasn't done anything because there hasn't been a policy in place. And now we're at a point where so many residents are going, you know what? I deserve curbing, guttering. I deserve a surfaced road. Why don't I have one? It's, other people have one. How come I don't have one? And so there were enough people requesting for a change and going, we need this. And so the mayor, so Councillor Liz, who is our current mayor, I got together with her. We invited some of the residents from the different roads who are impacted through both Beale and Sherborne wards, and we sat down with them and we just listened to what they want, what they'd like, and we knew already, it's pretty straightforward. You want a surfaced road. The last special charge scheme, there was an assumption that the project would be a surfacing of the road with asphalt. There would be formal gutters, formal drainage, possibly a footpath. So that's a full-on rebuild of that road. There are residents saying, we don't want all of that. We don't need all of that. We just need the asphalt, which is exactly what a lot of the residents of Lower Plenty acreage requested back in 1994 when, the councils amalgamated and we got Banyule. Banyule was formed in 1994. And the residents in that space said, look, just keep the dust down. We just want, a bit of asphalt slapped on top of the gravel. That's all we need. And that still is there. That still remains. Okay, and the potholes are just, filled up every now and then with Banyule. And a lot of those residents don't want it changed. Just leave it as it is. We don't want a footpath. We don't want a resurfaced road. Just leave it. That's what we like. But there are more and more residents coming into the area from more built up, infrastructurally sound areas that are going, where's my footpath?
Yeah.
Why don't I have a smooth surface? Why don't I have a smooth asphalt road? What's wrong with here? So where those unsealed roads are in Beale and Sherborne, there are others in Banyule, but residents haven't requested this change. So these residents, we met with them on a couple of occasions. We asked them, we knew we had a bit of a hill to get up because the mayor and I were all supportive of the change to the policy to be able to make it more fair for our residents. but the residents are coming from only our 2 wards. And in order for us to A, change a policy, and B, get all the councillors on board, or a majority at least, we needed support from the residents to tell us, and the councillors, the other fellow councillors, this is what it's like for us to live here. And we don't need to do that. We deserve better than that. And we would like to be better than that. We would like to have a better infrastructure than that. So they sent us videos, they sent us emails, they sent us arguments. They, came to council to present to us at the last budget submissions meeting in April. They were fantastic. The residents were fantastic. They really presented their arguments very, very well. And we had many conversations over the last 12 months or so, certainly since re-election. So, yeah, nearly 12 months. The new councillors came to understand what was happening, and we came up with a different special charge scheme whereby council is prepared to pay up to 33% of the cost.
Yep.
And then it's up to the residents to vote on whether they, what they want. Do they just want asphalt? Do they want drainage? What do they want? And therefore, who would support that? And out of the residents in the street, if the majority supports, then the project would go ahead. And the project would financially be distributed more fairly amongst the residents, so that it's a much lesser cost to the residents. And I'm just going to make it clear, it's the resident who lives there at the time. So the actual cost for for that part of the project goes on the property. It's part of the rates on that property. It's not for the residents specifically.
Yes, I did see in the policy that I think it was up to 40 quarters. So
10 years.
10 years, yes.
Yeah. So across 10 years, there's the whatever cost is for that particular property, that will be divided into 40. And that would go towards, that'll be on their rates notice. Yeah.
So, Alison, I did actually go through the process of the SCS, and the life cycle of a project from initiation, consultation, proposal, approval, rejection, a lot of touch points with the residents on every step. And to move forward on the steps, requiring at least 65% of residents saying, yes, we want this. The question I have is, let's say that they're in that 35% who potentially, or 30% who potentially vote no. Someone's voted no because they look at the price and they go, financial hardship. What is there from council to support them through the ability for them to be able to contribute without feeling the pressure of maybe having to sell and move?
Yeah. So 2 things. One, we still have the rates waiver and the financial hardship policy in place for our residents. That was voted on in 2020 in our first year of restrictions, and we've just maintained it every year. And we find that our residents who need it, so there are tick boxes. You can't just get it. You actually have to tick some boxes and be on a certain number of points. So I was on those points in 2022. I could have asked for hardship relief, rates waiver, and in 2023 I would not have been successful applying for it. So because my income varies significantly from year to year, so you need to apply every year, and you need to tick the boxes. And if you do, you can waive your rates, or you get a significant reduction. Okay, and that's a conversation to have with the officers at the time. We don't hear about you and your circumstances. We just voted for the policy. It's in place, and you're welcome to use it if you can.
Okay.
So there's that. There's also for individual residents, they would need to let us know at the time of the survey that they would need assistance, and they can always be in conversation with the appropriate officers about how it's paid back.
Okay.
So we do look at each individual, each individual household.
Okay, that's good. Yeah. Look, Alison, another part, those improvements could lead to a capital improvement, for want of a better term, or the value of of the properties there.
Mm.
Could that lead to a bit of a double whammy where they're
Mm.
paying for their part of the cost of the project,
Mhm.
and capital improvement is seen to have gone up because the value of the property's gone up,
Mhm.
but their rates go up.
Mm. So what you also have to remember is VAGO, Victorian Auditor General's Office, so that's an arm of the state government, actually advises rates through the CIV, the capital improved value. So you've got the land value, and then you've got the capital improved value, which is the house, the dwelling that's on
Yep.
there, and any improvements like your pools and your tennis courts if you have them, or your basketball courts, whatever. So whatever construction is on top of that land is your capital improved value. So it's not necessarily in relation to the structure of the street that you're in.
Okay.
Okay. Now, at the meeting on this particular item on the 1st of September, the minutes are available, the video is available for you to have a look at on the website. Not all councillors voted for this particular item. One councillor did not. And his argument was the argument that previous councils presented to community, which was, you bought on an unsealed road. You made that choice. The road is unsealed. You're responsible for it. And that was pretty much his attitude.
Yep.
And that's okay. He's entitled to that attitude. So we still didn't get 100% of the councillors voting for the benefit for our community. So I'm not sure if that's answered your question at all, but it's not that there's a double whammy.
Your first part did answer it, that the roads, drainage aren't seen as something that's included in that capital improvement calculation. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
Well, we've covered a fair bit of ground today, Alison. Is there anything else you'd like to raise about either of those two topics?
Neither of these two topics, although actually I will say this. I mentioned earlier, there are things that we in council don't know about what's happening with regards to the high density living. What was released on, I think it was Wednesday, was Heidelberg structure plan. So council's been working on a Heidelberg structure plan for many, many years around the activity centre, and looking at what information has been released from the state government. I think it was Wednesday, and I can send you the link for this so you can put it in the copy, Carl. It's worth looking at. Our planners, our director of planning has actually advised us a lot of things that our community contributed to in the conversations has been considered and addressed. So the Heidelberg structure plan isn't quite as extreme as, your 17-storey tower in Greensboro. Yeah. However, when you look at when you just look at the papers that are out, you look at the pretty colours and the pretty pictures and what towers, what construction is going where, there are a lot of blocks, and I mean like street blocks. There are a lot of street blocks that are open to anywhere between a 3-storey apartment block and a 6-storey apartment block. And when you look at the paper, there are a lot of those blocks that are going to be constructed over the next, let's call it 10 years.
Yeah.
We're not going to see, and I did write this in an email to our director of planning last night, we're not going to see a lot of space in between those properties, in those buildings.
Yep.
There's not a lot of space. There's certainly no trees, not a lot of light, and we're being asked to live in that. And that's not just, say, along Burgundy Street. That's 3 or 4 streets out from Burgundy Street in all directions. So if you can imagine some of our beautiful 1950s, 1940s, 1960s homes, they're solid, they're beautiful dwellings, they've got lots of character if they've been looked after. They're not going to be there. in 10, 20, 30 years' time. Instead, there are going to be your 3-story or your 6-story dwellings with apartments in them.
Concrete blocks.
Yeah. And there's probably going to be a lot of glass, though. I will say there's going to be a lot of glass. I can see it. But the point is, it's still a solid structure.
Yeah.
Do we want to live like that?
I made my point earlier on that
You
one.
did.
I did.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. So I'll leave that for everyone to think about. But what's something fun is going to happen soon is Youth Fest. I
Okay.
just want to let everybody know Youth Fest is going ahead again this year on Sunday, the 21st of September at Birdwood Park in McLeod. It's McLeod. Yeah, Birdwood Park in McLeod. So please make your way there midday, 21st of September. Goes on through until 5 p.m. There'll be a lot of our youth create bands and create music, and they create their own music. So they'll be on a couple of the stages, lots of different types of activities, stalls, information bays as well, various things, a whole heap of stuff going on. There's a lot that goes on, and our Jets team in Banyule does so much work to support our youth. They do a fantastic job. So they'll be there as well. So we'll see a lot of council officers there. The councillors will be floating around as well. So it's a good opportunity for a bit of networking and asking questions, understanding a little bit more about where we live. And obviously the strip shopping there, lots of places to go as well to grab a coffee, maybe some breakfast and head on down to Youth Fest.
Sounds good.
Hopefully the sun will be out and it'll be shining. It'll be a beautiful day.
Late next week, supposed to be 24, so it could be a lovely day.
Oh, could be good.
Absolutely. Well, look, Alison, thank you very much for your time today and your insights, both from a council's perspective, but also from a real estate agent's perspective on the impact that these policy changes could make to us, the way we live. And thank you, everyone, for listening to this podcast. If you would like to know more about the government's housing policy and the special charge scheme policy, you can follow the links in the copy below, which will take you to the websites where you can find more information. I hope that you will join us for next month's Champion Chat, where, Alison, a big one, we're going to be discussing the opening of the Rosanna Library.
We will. So with the Rosanna Library, it's due to be opened later this year. Apparently we're on track. We're holding them to it because we want it open. So it might be a Christmas present.
Okay. Well, we shall see how we go. I'm hopeful that it's next month because, I just want to get my teeth into it.
I know you do.
We'll see. We'll see how we go.
We will. All right, everybody, enjoy, and we'll see you at the next podcast. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you, everybody.